wonderforest.com.
Abdurrahman Abdrabu, Studio Al Qadra. This video presents the city of Thiour, located in the southeast of Algeria, which has suffered more than 20 years of this pollution. Waste, or wastes, are unwanted or unusable materials. Waste is any substance which is discarded after primary use, or is worthless, defective and of no use. A byproduct by contrast is a joint product of relatively minor economic value. A waste product may become a byproduct, joint product or resource through an invention that raises a waste product's value above zero. Examples include municipal solid waste, household trash/refuse, hazardous waste, wastewater, such as sewage, which contains bodily wastes, feces and urine, and surface runoff, radioactive waste, and others. United Nations Statistics Division. The UNSD Glossary of Environment Statistics describes waste as materials that are not prime products, that is, products produced for the market, for which the generator has no further use in terms of her own purposes of production, transformation or consumption, and of which he or she wants to dispose. Wastes may be generated during the extraction of raw materials, the processing of raw materials into intermediate and final products, the consumption of final products, and other human activities. Residuals recycled or reused at the place of generation are excluded. There are many waste types defined by modern systems of waste management, notably including there are many issues that surround reporting waste. It is most commonly measured by size or weight, and there is a stark difference between the two. For example, organic waste is much heavier when it is wet, and plastic or glass bottles can have different weights but be the same size. On a global scale, it is difficult to report waste because countries have different definitions of waste and what falls into waste categories, as well as different ways of reporting. Based on incomplete reports from its parties, the Basel Convention estimated 338 million tons of waste was generated in 2001. For the same year, ECT estimated 4 billion tons from its member countries. Despite these inconsistencies, waste reporting is still useful on a small and large scale to determine key causes and locations, and to find ways of preventing, minimizing, recovering, treating, and disposing waste. Municipal waste includes household waste, commercial waste, and demolition waste. Hazardous waste includes industrial waste. Biomedical waste includes clinical waste. Special hazardous waste includes radioactive waste, explosive waste, and electronic waste, e-waste. Environmental costs. Inappropriately managed waste can attract rodents and insects, which can harbor gastrointestinal parasites, yellow fever, worms, the plague and other conditions for humans, and exposure to hazardous wastes, particularly when they are burned, can cause various other diseases including cancers. Toxic waste materials can contaminate surface water, groundwater, soil, and air, which causes more problems for humans, other species, and ecosystems. Waste treatment and disposal produces significant greenhouse gas, GHG, emissions, notably methane, which are contributing significantly to global warming. Social costs. Waste management is a significant environmental justice issue. Many of the environmental burdens cited above are more often borne by marginalized groups, such as racial minorities, women, and residents of developing nations. NIMBY, not in my backyard, is the opposition of residents to a proposal for a new development because it is close to them. However, the need for expansion and siting of waste treatment and disposal facilities is increasing worldwide. There is now a growing market in the transboundary movement of waste, and although most waste that flows between countries goes between developed nations, a significant amount of waste is moved from developed to developing nations. Resource recovery is the retrieval of recyclable waste, which was intended for disposal, for a specific next use. It is the processing of recyclables to extract or recover materials and resources, or convert to energy. This process is carried out at a resource recovery facility. Resource recovery is not only important to the environment, but it can be cost-effective by decreasing the amount of waste sent to the disposal stream, reduce the amount of space needed for landfills, and protect limited natural resources. Energy recovery from waste is using non-recyclable waste materials and extracting from it heat, electricity, or energy through a variety of processes, including combustion, gasification, pyrolyzation, and anaerobic digestion. This process is referred to as waste to energy. There are several ways to recover energy from waste. Anaerobic digestion is a naturally occurring process of decomposition where organic matter is reduced to a simpler chemical component in the absence of oxygen. Incineration or direct controlled burning of municipal solid waste to reduce waste and make energy. Secondary recovered fuel is the energy recovery from waste that cannot be reused or recycled from mechanical and biological. If plastic had been invented when the Pilgrims sailed from Plymouth, England, to North America, and the Mayflower had been stocked with bottled water and plastic wrapped snacks, their plastic trash would likely still be around, 4 centuries later. If the Pilgrims had been like many people today and simply tossed their empty bottles and wrappers over the side, Atlantic waves and sunlight would have worn all that plastic into tiny bits. And those bits might still be floating around the world's oceans today, sponging up toxins to add to the ones already in them, waiting to be eaten by some hapless fish or oyster, and ultimately perhaps by one of us. We should give thanks that the Pilgrims didn't have plastic, I thought recently as I rode a train to Plymouth along England's south coast. I was on my way to see a man who would help me make sense of the whole mess we've made with plastic, especially in the ocean. Pilgrims didn't have plastic, I thought recently as I rode a train to Plymouth along England's south coast. I was on my way to see a man who would help me make sense of the whole mess we've made with plastic, especially in the ocean. Picture of a woman and her son immersed in a landscape of plastic white sheets after sheets of clear plastic trash have been washed in the Burganga River, in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Noor Jahan spreads them out to dry, turning them regularly, while also tending to her son, Momo. The plastic will eventually be sold to a recycler. Less than a fifth of all plastic gets recycled globally. In the US it's less than 10%. Magazine You can help turn the tide on plastic. Here's how? Magazine Why we're giving up the plastic wrapper around our magazine because plastic wasn't invented until the late 19th century, and production really only took off around 1950. We have a mere 9.2 billion tons of the stuff to deal with. Of that, more than 6.9 billion tons have become waste. And of that waste, a staggering 6.3 billion tons never made it to a recycling bin, a figure that stunned the scientists who crunched the numbers in 2017. No one knows how much unrecycled plastic waste ends up in the ocean, Earth's last sink. In 2015, Jenny Jambeck, a University of Georgia engineering professor, caught everyone's attention with a rough estimate: between 5.3 million and 14 million tons each year just from coastal regions. Most of it isn't thrown off ships, she and her colleagues say, but it dumped carelessly on land or in rivers, mostly in Asia. It's then blown or washed into the sea. Imagine 5 plastic grocery bags stuffed with plastic trash, Jambeck says, sitting on every foot of coastline around the world. That would correspond to about 8.8 million tons, her middle-of-the-road estimate of what the ocean gets from us annually. It's unclear how long it will take for that plastic to completely biodegrade into its constituent molecules. Estimates range from 450 years to never. In every foot of coastline around the world, that would correspond to about 8.8 million tons, her middle-of-the-road estimate of what the ocean gets from us annually. It's unclear how long it will take for that plastic to completely biodegrade into its constituent molecules. Estimates range from 450 years to never. Picture of an underwater scene filled with various colorful plastic bottles. Plastic bottles choke the Cibeles fountain, outside City Hall in central Madrid. An art collective called Luz Interruptus filled this and 2 other Madrid fountains with 60,000 discarded bottles last fall as a way of calling attention to the environmental impact of disposable plastics. Meanwhile, ocean plastic is estimated to kill millions of marine animals every year. Nearly 700 species, including endangered ones, are known to have been affected by it. Some are harmed visibly, strangled by abandoned fishing nets or discarded six-pack rings. Many more are probably harmed invisibly. Marine species of all sizes, from zooplankton to whales, now eat microplastics, the bits smaller than 1/5 of an inch across. On Hawaii's Big Island, on a beach that seemingly should have been pristine, no paved road leads to it. I walked ankle deep through microplastics. They crunched like Rice Krispies under my feet. After that, I could understand why some people see ocean plastic as a looming catastrophe, worth mentioning in the same breath as climate change. At a global summit in Nairobi last December, the head of the United Nations Environment Program spoke of an ocean Armageddon. A lifetime of plastic. The first plastics made from fossil fuels are just over a century old. They came into widespread use after World War II and are found today in everything from cars to medical devices to food packaging. Their useful lifetime varies. Once disposed of, they break down into smaller fragments that linger for centuries. After we'd steamed along for a while, Thompson reeled the mantis trawl back in. There was a smattering of colored plastic confetti at the bottom. Thompson himself doesn't worry much about microplastics in his fish and chips. There's little evidence yet that they pass from the gut of a fish into the flesh we actually eat. See, we know plastic is harming marine life. What about us? He worries more about the things that none of us can see, the chemicals added to plastics to give them desirable properties, such as malleability, and the even tinier nanoplastics that microplastics presumably degrade into. Those might pass into the tissues of fish and humans. We do know the concentrations of chemicals at the time of manufacture in some cases are very high, Thompson said. We don't know how much additive is left in the plastic by the time it becomes bite-sized to a fish. Nobody has found nanoparticles in the environment. They're below the level of detection for analytical equipment. People think they are out there. They have the potential to be sequestered in tissue, and that could be a game changer.